All right, so this video is going to give you some information about writing an SAQ or a short answer question for the APUSH exam. I looked for videos online and there are a ton of them and none of them quite really, they all had some good pieces, but I decided I might as well just do my own. So first of all, the SAQ is a content question. Okay, so you have two halves of the exam. The first half is the content, and that's the stimulus multiple choice and the SAQs. And then the second half is your LEQ and DBQ, so a little bit more analysis and interpretation. So I actually love the SAQ. It's fun. I think they're fun to write, and I think they're for me, they're fun to grade. Every single short answer question, and you will have, I think you'll have 45 minutes to answer 3. So you've got about, like there's something like 13 to 15 minutes for each one. And I recommend first that you always do the one that's the easiest, the one you know right away, because you'll do that quickly. And then you can spend a little bit more time on the one that you maybe don't know as much about. So each SAQ question is going to have 3 tasks, A, B, and C. Sometimes you're going to have 2 pieces of writing as stimulus, and they're going to ask you to do some comparisons and then find evidence that is outside of the documents to support one piece or the other. Sometimes you're going to have a graph. Sometimes you're going to have a picture or a cartoon. And sometimes you're not going to have either of those. So I'm going to jump down to the bottom of this page so that you can see just what one looks like. So here are some practice ones. Complete the 3 following tasks. Identify 3 crops or livestock that were introduced by the Spanish. Briefly explain how one of the examples changed work or trade. Briefly explain one long-term result of the change explained in B. Okay, so it's content, it's straight up content. The other example, one important similarity between the British colonies and the Chesapeake, one important difference, one factor that accounts for the differences. Okay, I think all of you could probably answer that one pretty easily. So let's go back up to the top. So these are toggle points. So you either get it right or you get it wrong. And essentially you want the reader to look at it and be like, oh, yep, got it, yep, got it, yep, boom, boom, boom. You don't want a reader to kind of dither about it and think, oh, did they get that? Is that what that meant? Is that what that person meant? Is it good enough? You don't want that. So you want it to be very clear. And again, they're toggle points. So you either get 3 out of 3 or 2 out of 3 or 1 out of 3 or 0 out of 3. Let's see. When you are looking at the question, the most important thing that you can do is look at the time periods that are listed in the question. So let's go back down to our example down here. This one says 15th and 16th centuries. So you definitely want to stay in the 14 and 1500s. This one, 1607 to 1754. So you are looking from about Jamestown to the beginning of the French and Indian War. So your answer has to fall within those dates. That's something that's really important to understand. Okay. Another thing you're going to do is if there's a stimulus with it, you're going to see who the author is, when it was written, what dates they're talking about in there. So again, make sure you're in this prescribed time period. And unless you were actually asked to go beyond the time period, make sure that you stay in it. That's the easiest way to lose a point, is to go outside the time period. Another easy way to lose a point is to just not really actually answer the question, which is a problem. So 3 tasks, you can label them A, B, and C or not. I recommend not. Okay. So if you label them, then the reader can only look for the answer in A, or for A in A. That makes sense. They can only look for B in B. If you don't label them, then they can find your answer in any of the three. So maybe you actually answer A accidentally in C. Well, if they're not labeled, then I can give you the point. If they are labeled, I can't. So that's something that's pretty important. And that's why I recommend firmly against labeling your responses. So looking at this GIF here, start at the beginning again. So here's your question, A, B, and C. Then you can separate them and you can answer under each of these. You can, you have all your answers there, but don't leave them like that. Okay. What you really want to do is you want to put them down at the bottom altogether. You can start by labeling them, but then get rid of the label after you're done. So you could, lightly write A, B, and C just to make sure that you have answered all the parts of it, but then get rid of it. Do not separate your answers like this. Ultimately, you want all of your answers to fall below the text or the prompts like this. It doesn't need to be a paragraph. They can be in sections, just don't label them. All right, moving along. So each letter should be answered in 3 parts. And your whole response for all 3 parts, A, B, and C, should be about 7 to 9 sentences. You don't want to be too brief. Yes, I have seen people answer the question, like answer the A in 1 sentence, but it sort of makes me nervous. It's better to not do it that way. It's better to think about each one, each A, B, and C being like 3 sections. First, you answer the question, then you provide the evidence, specific historical evidence, and you explain, or the other way around. Answer the question, explain the answer, and give specific historical evidence to answer it. And that's like proper noun evidence. Okay. So in my MTDA class, they use the acronym AIR. So answer the question. You may be able to mention some examples, but don't go off on tangent. They should be very focused on the prompt. Include support. This is the why behind the what. Okay, this is your explanation. And then reference the source if it's been provided for you. How does the information you've been given support your response? Or what specific historical piece of evidence can you bring in as an example to support your argument? Okay. The questions are testing your content knowledge and also your thinking skills. It doesn't have to be obscure. Okay. You don't, if they're asking you for a cause of the American Revolution, you can say the intolerable acts, something obvious. You can say the debt caused by the French and Indian War. It doesn't have to be obscure for it to be right. Okay, it might be pretty obvious, or you might think, oh, that seems too easy. It could be. It might be that easy. Okay. But what you really want to do is have a proper noun for every response. You need to be able to pull that specific historical information in. Name it, explain it. Don't just name drop. Make sure you explain it. It's also really important that you keep yourself out of the answer. So no first or second person pronouns. Keep it all third person. You're writing about history. It's not your history. America is not your country. It's a country that you're writing about. Okay, this is how we maintain that historical objectivity. So for instance, the example I give here, Teddy Roosevelt was the greatest president of the 20th century, or I believe Teddy Roosevelt was the greatest. So you don't want this. You don't want that I believe. You don't want to talk about the United States as being our country or us as being Americans. No first or second person pronouns. So first you read through the question, and then if you have a stimulus, read the passage or look at it. I've got HAP here. Now this is sort of like SOAPs or CAP POV. So CAP is context, audience, purpose, point of view. Okay, HAP, CAP, different programs use different acronyms. But essentially, CAP POV is what you should always do when you're looking at the stimulus, if there is one. Okay. you've all learned, I think, how to unpack prompts. So make sure you do that here. Circle the verb, use that verb when you're responding in your answer so that it's very clear that you know what you are supposed to do. Again, I think I mentioned it earlier. One of the big mistakes is when people don't actually answer the question at hand. I already told you about toggle points. You can get a minor detail wrong, okay? As long as it doesn't change the understanding of the question or the gist of it, the big thing, like if you called Jonathan Edwards, James Edwards, as long as all of the other pieces and parts of it are correct, they might be okay with that. It's not a disaster by any means. All right. Let me think. What else do I want to tell you? Okay, so let's take a look at these questions down here. Let's look at number 2 first. And so it says, briefly explain one important similarity between the British colonies in the Chesapeake region and the British colonies in New England. Okay, so we are looking at that middle colony versus New England. Okay, so one important similarity, maybe you're going to say that religion in the Northeast was much more strict because of the Puritans, capitalize that P, in the Massachusetts Bay Colony, capital letters, proper nouns, than in the middle colonies, who had many single men coming in looking for economics advancement and who weren't as bound to the religious aspects of the colony. What's one important oh, I did that backwards. Oh, see, there's an example. Read the question, make sure you answer right. I'd have been okay if I hadn't labeled it A, B, and C because they could have given me that point for this. All right, so I just said the differences. One similarity, and don't say that they're both British colonies. That's absolutely not good enough. So what you do want to say is maybe something like that there was farming that existed in both areas. That a similarity for that, or that people were coming to have like a fresh start or a new start. You could also talk about indentured servitude maybe happening in both areas. So you're looking for that one similarity, but then give a specific example. So again, for A, answer the question, explain your answer, give a proper noun example. B, answer the question, explain your answer, give a proper noun example. And then it says, briefly explain one factor that accounts for the difference that you indicated in B. So if in B maybe I'm going to talk about let's do the religion. Okay. So you would explain in this one how the settlers in the middle colonies started from basically the joint stock companies of Jamestown, and they came looking for their fortune, not necessarily there to settle down. Whereas in the Northeast, they came to create that city on a hill, that perfect colony where they could practice their religious beliefs. And so you had more families versus more single men. So those are those specific examples. Don't go over 9 sentences. That's too many. It is timed. And I think that's kind of all I have to say to you. Maybe I'll add a little bit more to this later if I could come up with something else. But you'll get plenty of practice in this class writing them before we have the final test. We always start with these where you'll have a homework assignment, you'll have a chance to fix them, you'll see my feedback before they actually end up on a test that's graded. So, all right, if you have any questions, let me know.